I'm Frank Fukuyama, professor here at SAIS. Really happy to welcome my friend Carl Gershman, who is the president and chairman of the National Endowment for Democracy, where I'm a board member. This year was Carl's 25th anniversary. He's the first and only president that the NED has ever had. I wrote a short memorial or tribute to him. And, I'm sorry, not yes. He's still kicking. It's a short tribute to his first 25 years at the Net. I thought I would just read that as by way of introduction because it's pretty short. So, it is hard to imagine the National Endowment for Democracy without Carl Gershman, or Carl Gershman without the NED. So intertwined are the histories of this organization and this individual. The leadership he has given it was responsible for giving the NED the unique credibility and independence it enjoys today. The National Endowment for Democracy was born in the midst of the Cold War at a time when America's role in the world was under attack from many quarters for its support of non-democratic regimes and use of less than above-board methods in promoting its interests around the world. What was needed above all was a bipartisan organization that would rise above the political quarrels of the day and represent what was best about the United States, its democratic ideals and support for universal human rights. It required a delicate touch since the need for such an organization was not well understood at the time. It is a tribute to Carl's vision and leadership that today support for the NED can virtually be taken for granted across political lines and has a credibility as well among the activists around the world who lean on it for advice and assistance. In my dealings with Carl over the years, the thing that has most impressed me is his encyclopedic knowledge of the NED's activities, his personal acquaintance with its grantees, and the sure judgment he brings to the understanding of the political struggles in which we are engaged. It's no small mark of leadership that he has succeeded in recruiting and inspiring an equally knowledgeable and dedicated staff over the years, many of whom I would like to point out are SAIS graduates with the brains and flexibility to provide help where it is most needed. The world has changed many times since Carl started with the NED 25 years ago. In many ways, the role of the U.S. has become highly controversial again, and challenges to democracy have spread in a way that we have not seen since the Cold War. But the NED's role has remained fixed through good times and bad. Perhaps the greatest tribute to Carl Gershman's impact at the present time is the way that many of today's authoritarians and opponents of democracy find that a small organization called the National Endowment for Democracy is something they have to worry about. So I present Carl Gershman.
Thank you, Frank. One of the reasons we've been as successful as we have, especially recently, is that we have someone like Frank Fukuyama who gives his time for the NED board, and he, I don't know how he does it all, the writing that he does, but is also able to give us time looking at programs, overseeing our fellowship program and so forth. I've handed out 3 documents, which I'll say a little bit about them because it's very relevant to the 20th anniversary. I've just returned from 2 conferences that have something to do with this. One was a meeting in Lviv, which is in western Ukraine, on the 20th anniversary of a meeting we held in Wrocław, Poland, at the beginning of November 1989. The NED made a small grant to 2 groups in Poland. One was called the Polish-Czechoslovak Solidarity, the other New Coalition. And the objective of this meeting that we had in Wrocław in November 1989 was basically to support the revolution in Czechoslovakia. And Havel, when he came to speak at the Polish Parliament the following year, said that this meeting was a prologue to the Velvet Revolution. And you know, I always felt that the $7,500 that we gave for that meeting was the best grant the NED ever made, and I really mean that, and I said it in the remarks. What this grant and this conference did was it started a process that we at the NED called cross-border work. Polish-Czech Solidarity, they were people from Poland and Czechoslovakia meeting on the green border in the mountains near Wrocław, which is near the border with Czechoslovakia. And this started a process of cross-border solidarity. There was a strong feeling in Poland at the time, developed in a magazine called Kultura in Paris, that Poland's freedom depended on freedom in Ukraine, that Poland's freedom depended on freedom in Lithuania, that it needed a better neighborhood because it had experienced all of these terrible partitions in the past, and then the two totalitarianisms of the 20th century. And once Poland achieved its freedom, and then Czechoslovakia, both countries started supporting democracy in the region. And it became a very large process. The NED has supported some 54 organizations in a dozen countries in the Central European region to support democracy further to the east. In February, it was actually out of a discussion, Frank, with a Ukrainian fellow, who told us that Ukraine wanted to come into the EU, but there was no interest in Ukraine's joining the EU in Western Europe. And the only country that really cared about it was Poland. And so we developed the idea, why not have a conference on the 20th anniversary of the Wrocław Conference, but move it 500 kilometers to the east to symbolize the movement of democracy to the east. And Lviv is a sister city with Wrocław. They're both cities that are known for their multiculturalism. By the way, they were both cities that experienced, very grave violence during the World War II between Poles and Ukrainians. And so the idea of partnership between these cities sort of symbolized getting over these historical antagonisms and the territorial claims that were made against each other, and to have a new era of peace because they felt that was necessary if Poland and Ukraine and others were to preserve their freedom and their dignity. So we had this meeting, and it brought together 260 of the leading activists from the region to look at how to carry this process forward, with the specific focus on something that the European Union has called the Eastern Partnership Initiative. The Eastern Partnership Initiative is something developed by Poland and Sweden, focused on 6 countries to try to start the process of bringing them into the EU. The countries are Ukraine, Belarus, Moldova, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia. And the purpose of this conference was to develop recommendations that would go to the Civil Society Forum of the Eastern Partnership Initiative of the European Union, which is meeting in Brussels November 16th and 17th. And so the conference developed elaborate recommendations in all sorts of fields: education, culture, religion, governance, corruption, all the kinds of issues you would think of, and to begin to connect this intergovernmental process with civil society. That was the idea of the meeting.